because we are going to see if everything is working first. So I see something happening on YouTube, which is good. And I can see myself there without watermarks, which is also great. And LinkedIn is also tuning in, which is also good. And let's see. This is working nicely. And there's always quite a decent delay everywhere. So starting up LinkedIn now, and that's working as well, which is cool. So we have LinkedIn, we have Twitch, we have X, we have YouTube. Everything seems to be working. Awesome. All right. Is X working as well? Let's see if we can fix this one. All right, well. There's one stream that doesn't seem to be working yet. So just double checking that to be sure. If you're already tuning in, thank you so much. I'm just making sure that all the different platforms are working and playing along nicely. And they are, which is great. Cool. All right, so let me just close a few things so I can fully focus on entertaining you and sharing some knowledge with you. And make sure to say hi in the chat so we can also make sure that that is working as well. And we are live. All right, cool. So for those who are watching, thank you for joining the stream. And you might be thinking, well, that's a bit of a short heads up. Hello, Rakvendra. I'm sure I mispronounced your name. Sorry about that. But you might be wondering, so why are you live with like a 2-hour notice? That doesn't give us a lot of time to be able to join you. And that's absolutely true. But it's Monday. We have stuff to do. And the same goes for me. So actually, one of the things that I'll be doing this week is redoing my own design system. Because yes, I'm planning on redoing my own website. And at the same time, I picked up a brand new client, which I'm totally excited about. And for them, I also installed a new design system. And rightfully so, they also asked how they're able to manage that themselves. So let me just mute myself because I'm hearing myself, which can be a bit annoying. There we go. And this one as well. Cool. So like I said, I have a new client who I've been working with, created a new design system, and they rightfully said, well, we want to know how we can work with that, how to set that up ourselves. So multiple people have asked me, hey, how can we work with this cool stuff? And that's exactly what I'm going to show you today. And yeah, I'm going to show you by doing it. So I'll do my best to keep my eyes on the chat. If you do have a question, feel free to let me know. I'll see if I can open it up here and here. Awesome. So let me share my screen with you and talk you through the presentation, the Figma file. So let's start at the beginning. I've downloaded the latest copy of UntitledUI, which is the starting point, the design system that we'll be using. You can download a free version at philipwallage.com/untitledui. DM me for the link if you're interested. And what you get is actually this file. The only thing that I've done is I renamed it to have an identifier. And I also published it once because that takes the longest time. I do hope that it was published correctly, because otherwise we'll lose some time during the process. And one of the reasons why I love UntitledUI is because it also it's extremely well documented. So it has a decent introduction. It talks about having all these different files, and it can be quite memory intensive when you download the file. So as you can see here on the left side of the screen, there are a lot of different sections. So we have the foundations, the shared components, some assets like a login page, email templates, and then it goes even further into marketing website examples with like a landing page. And it has marketing website components like the navigation, the header section, and underneath it even has an example of dashboarding, but also the application component. So as you can see, this is actually a lot of stuff crammed into one file, which makes it very memory heavy, or heavy on the memory part. So Figma will in a second give me a warning like, hey, this file is using a lot of memory. And one of the things that you need to do when you start working with UntitledUI is actually to move things to separate files. And I'll start with that in a second. But I also want to dive into a few more details, because UntitledUI actually has 3 different versions. They have the variables, the variable function, a layer style function, and a very simple version. So I'm using the the variable version, which means that here on the right side, I have something called local variables, and we're using the 5th or version 5 from UntitledUI, which actually has a lot of new cool stuff. So they have primitives, which are your basic color setup. So your different gray modes, your different colors, your brand color, error color, warning color, success color. And as you can see here on the left side, everything's grouped neatly. Then within color modes, you can actually see that, for example, if there's a foreground color, which is a color which is being used for buttons or text, for example, you can actually see that it is linked to a certain primitive color. I'll get to that in a second. This is all the fun stuff. We'll be streaming for more or less about 2 hours, a little bit less, I think. And the goal is to set up the Figma file and to be able to use it throughout different files as well. So let's get started with that. I'll delete some of these introduction pages and documentations. It has a very nice introduction to variables. It links to some Figma resources as well. It explains how the variables are linked and some explanation of what those names actually mean. We can get rid of this for now. And let me show you how the file will be set up. So we will have our core file. We will have marketing components and application components. So these are actually linked like this. So this one goes there, and this one goes there. And then finally, there are actually page examples, and those are linked underneath these 2 respectively. So that's the way that we will set it up. And why are we doing it this way? Because we want the files to be light, modular, and linked to each other. Because in the future, hopefully, if you set up your core file correctly, there's not too much need to go back to it. And you can really focus, and you can really focus on getting the content right for your digital products that you're building. So this could be the marketing website. This could be an application. You could create a separate one if needed for mobile apps or native mobile apps. But that's all up to you. So before I'm actually going to customize it, what I'll do is start splitting up the file. So as you can see, I already have 3 files open. So what I did in my own project folder is I have the core file here, and I created 3 new documents. You can ignore the two on the right because these are my historical files, I would say. And the first thing that we're going to do is actually move the application components and the marketing components to their new file. And before I do that, I just want to do a quick double check to see if I missed anything in the chat. And I have UntitledUI. I think that should post that link. There we go. So if you're interested in trying out the free version, there's a link in the chat on LinkedIn, on X, and on YouTube, and even on Twitch. There we go. All right. Cool. So let's split up that file. I'll open up let's see, we can do it from top to bottom. So we'll leave the foundation. We'll leave the shared components, shared assets. And this is actually the marketing example page. We'll have to move that later on because first we need to move the components. And before we can do that, let's double check if the file is actually fully published, which is not. So this will have to run for a little bit. This will probably take about a minute or two, I hope. And this is why you want to split up the file, because the Untitled UI is a very rich design system with over 10,000 components and variables. And it's very powerful because, yes, you can customize everything to your liking. So far, I haven't encountered a single brand within 12 years that was not able to fit within the design system. But to set it up, it takes a bit of work. So that's what I'll show you today. Also, while we wait, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. So if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'd love to know who you are, where you're from, what your job is, what you're working on. And we can take it from there. So the marketing website component. So I created 3 files, and what I did, I just copied these names as the file names, but I also created all the pages to save us some time. So what I'm going to do is within the marketing components, I'm actually going to link the core, or the Untitled UI design system, the core file, to it. So I need to check the libraries here. And you can see that I have multiple files already. And this is the one I labeled it stream to make sure that I got it right. And the reason why we need to link it, and let's also do it here before I forget it, is because if we copy or actually move the components from one file to these files, is we want to make sure that we don't break any of these component links. So everything is nicely linked together, which is awesome, because if we change a color, we'll change a font, everything will get pushed through all the files. So everything is linked together the same way developers would set it up with components. So luckily that doesn't take that much time, and I'll go back to the overview of the pages and layers. And this is a bit the boring part, but we'll have to get through it. So I'll just cut the header navigations, paste it here. And before we continue, we want to do a quick check to see if our components are still linked to each other. What up, Chris? Happy to see you here. Francisca, nice to have you as well. Thanks for tuning in and joining me on this lovely Monday morning. And as you can see, these colors and this, well, the colors and the symbol, they actually say that this is now the main component. So that worked quite well. And we'll go on. So I'll try to do this as fast as possible because this isn't the sexiest stuff. But like I said, it's what you need to do. It's the small investment you need to make, because this will save you a bunch of time in the future. And the project that we'll be designing today is actually my own website. So over the 12 years of doing business, my brand has undergone quite a bunch of changes. And I'm sure that you know that whenever you either work on landing pages for yourself, you might not do it as neatly as you would do it for your clients. So my goal with this is also to really bring this to a level that a paying client would be happy with, because why would we lower the bar for our own work, right? So these are pricing sections. While we go through this, I think it's already a nice way of you to get an idea of all the different screens and modules that are available. So we had the pricing, but also all sorts of different call to actions, from sign up to newsletters or download white papers or whatever call to action, get your free trial for SaaS products. We have a metric section. Well, I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but who doesn't love those metrics on landing pages, right? A separate newsletter call to action with a input field for an email instead of the call to action buttons. Testimonial sections, and I have to be honest here, I think it's a better idea to first think in what way you're actually going to collect and keep your testimonials, because you can always build your own testimonial system, but there are a lot of different tools out there. Hey, social proof, did I miss one? Oh, this is actually the testimonial. It's hard to talk and work at the same time. Social proof. This is the social proof. So like I said, you want to make sure that you have a nice system in place to collect testimonials. If you're a designer tuning in, or well, actually any other business, grabbing those customer testimonials will do you wonders. It's a lot easier to have a convincing landing page when you actually have the clients who are talking positively about you. If you're interested in seeing an example, you can go to love.philipwallage.com, which is a horrible domain name to spell for non-Dutch people, but my name, Philip, I guess you can figure that one out, Philip, and then Wallage is WALLAGE.com. So love.philipwallage.com. Content sections. Am I still doing things right? This is sections. And you can already see the memory usage warning popping up in Figma. And that's exactly why we're doing this. Hello. I do have a bit of a fight going on this morning with my copy-paste skills, which is of course a horrible pain to have as a designer. At least until we get replaced by AI, right? Cool, and we'll go to the careers section. So yes, with the career sections, if you do have a marketing website on which you would also publish your jobs, this is very nice to have. Of course, an FAQ section, and that allows us to almost wrap up the first part before we get into the fun stuff, customizing the template. We're about 15 minutes in, and yeah, I would say to set up the Figma file, if you're doing it fast and you're not talking through your work, I would say it's about 30 minutes to an hour, which, yeah, it is an hour of your time, but yeah, only setting up the color system on your own would take up even a lot more time. So as you can see here in the bottom right, to move components to this file, publish, library update. So that's what we're going to do. We actually now moved these components to the marketing components, and I'm going to quickly rename this to make sure it's recognizable. So this is the marketing website component. So I'll just call this marketing components stream. So we'll have to publish this. And by publishing it, this is actually the final step of really migrating the components from the core step or the core file towards a separate Figma file. So this takes a little bit of time. And while we wait for it to publish, we can continue with the application components. And then finally, we'll do the page examples. But if you take a look at this one, the page examples actually fall underneath the marketing components and the application components. So we'll need to make sure that these page examples are actually linked towards those files as well. So we first need to set up those files before we can actually link those page examples. I'm wondering if I made a boo-boo. Just making sure that everyone can also see my Figma screen. You should be able to. Yes. All right, YouTube almost gave me a small heart attack. I've been streaming without sound for a while. I've been streaming without sharing my screen, which of course is very helpful. And it seems to be working, so that's good. Awesome, cool. So the marketing components is already published, which is cool. So this part is done. And we will now continue by deleting all these pages, which is always very nice because I don't think, oh yes, you can. Ha! That's very nice. So let's delete multiple pages. We should be careful. I think the divider should, oh yeah, there we go. Delete divider. And we will go into the application components. And here as well, I already created all the pages to save us a little bit of time, because I know that these are not the most fun, sexy work to go through. But once we're done with this, the page examples isn't that much. I will start changing colors, typography, styles. I'll show you how to add an additional size of input fields, because one of the beefs that I have with UntitledUI is actually that it only has like a small and medium input field. And actually almost every project I have requires a larger input field, which is just very user-friendly. Modals. Oh, here's something interesting happened. So after this is modals. So we'll need to add a couple of variable options or attributes. I'm not sure what the correct name is. Multiple components, component variants. There we go. Figma is hard. And as you can see, modals for applications, but then again, you can also, of course, use modals in your marketing website, because maybe you want to have an exit intent modal when somebody wants to leave your website. Their mouse exits the screen, and with a small JavaScript script, you can actually open up a pop-up and say, wait, before you leave, download my free ebook or whatever. These are the metrics. Slide out menu. So these are also very cool. I'll quickly show you. I guess when you see it, you already have an idea of what you can use this for. A lot of different filters, for example, notification settings, maybe some historical thing, or even a bit of e-commerce, inline CTAs. This one, inline CTAs. Did I do the slide out menus? Not yet. Let's go. Pagination. Oh man, how many paginations did you design in your career? So I've been working as a designer for 20 years, 12 of them as a freelance UX designer. And I started with Photoshop, made the huge improvement step to Sketch, but only after a few years with Sketch, Figma came out. And I think it was maybe 2016. I started using it, maybe even a little bit later, 2018, I'm not quite sure. And one of the downsides that Sketch actually had was it wasn't really multiplayer friendly. It was also Mac only, which for me wasn't much of a problem, but for some people it was. And when Sketch came, it was really the, well, browser PWA. Well, it's really browser based, which makes all of the collaboration features so incredibly fun and powerful. And yeah, it was easy to make the switch from Sketch to Figma. And many people did. So Figma by far is the market leader in design software. Adobe tried to purchase it. The deal fell through, on which I'm very, very happy, because this allows me to still cancel my Adobe subscription. Breadcrumbs. Back in the day, you could buy your Adobe Photoshop for like 100, 200 euros. And now we're paying like 50, 60 euros a month, which I think is quite a shame, because we can still work fine with the Photoshop version of 2-3 years ago. But instead, they are deciding for you that you need to pay every month for features that you maybe don't need. But hey, that's life, right? So look, it's a beautiful date picker. Let me just go into a bit more depth here. So as you can see, date picker. And how many colors do you think a date picker has? Well, we have here this circle. As you can see, it's a brand solid, which is actually one tint lighter than the call to action button. There's a specific background color gray. There's the border grays. There's the icon grays. There's different colors. Text disabled, text secondary foreground. So this would easily be, let's say, up to 8 different colors already. But yeah, the date picker is a really nice starting point. Quite often you don't need to have custom date pickers. Sometimes you do, but even then you can use this as a starting point, which is nice. File uploads, also something that you would always need. Not quite sure what this icon here is doing, by the way. Pretty sure we can get rid of that one. Oh, maybe it was from the mobile version. Not quite sure why what it's doing over there. I'll just leave it for now. If we need it, we can fix it later. Content dividers, so all these charming elements. We'll wrap this up quickly. Loading indicators, which is also a very nice one to have. Empty states, which you might not always design, but your developer friends will love you if you'll do, because otherwise they will need to figure it out. And a code snippet. Cool. So once again, let's publish Oh, let's first rename it properly. So these are application components. Application components. Let's publish this. And once again, by publishing this, we're actually moving all the main components to a separate file, which will reduce the memory usage as well. Oh, that, yeah, the error that it shows is really more of a warning saying, from the top of my head, I'm not even quite sure what to call it, but it's really a warning saying, well, hey, that you're moving components. If you don't have your files properly linked together, things might break. And now actually that I'm saying that, I'm wondering if that's not the case with what I'm doing, because we have landing pages here and go to main components. So now I need to make sure that we're actually relinking this file to the two that we just published, because otherwise it won't know where the main components are. So I hope that's going to work. Let's see, marketing components. Is this the stream one? It's quite lovely that you can't actually, let's just type stream. So I'm going to add the marketing components, and I'm going to add the application components like this. And if I now go to, let's see, because this is indeed quite interesting now that we've moved these parts here. And I just want to see that these are published. No changes. No changes. So if we added the marketing and the application components, and these are now here, so we need to make sure that they are actually linked, which they are. Then I do need to know that these still have a main component. Push changes to main components. Interesting. So let's say, for example, this is the hero header section. Drop down, and then it has a section here. Metric section. What changes does it actually tell? It has a lot of icon changes, which is interesting. Because then if I now create the page examples, so everything from those pages I actually want to move here, I need to make sure that also these pages are linked to the core, that they are linked to the marketing components, and that they are linked to the application components. So now they are. And what I actually want to do, and I'll see if that will reconnect them, is actually say, well, these are the landing pages for the marketing website examples. Paste them here. That worked nicely. Give it some time. Yes. Paste again. Let's see if I can just make it a happy yellow. So these are now moved here. Heroes section. I can go to main components. And it still pushes me back to the core, which is interesting. Because I would like to know, for example, if I take a look at this button, actions, it says button, go to main components, and that actually pushes me back to button, so that's fine. So we are going to move all these pages here as a last step of the migration part. Pricing pages, because we want to get all this stuff out of the core file, so we can actually easily work with the core file, change the colors, change the brand. It's taking some while to cut these pages. There are a lot of different components linked to it. But once we moved the final pages and the application examples, we're good to go. Let's go, blog. You can do it. If we go to blog posts, ooh, I do see a possible tricky situation here that a stroke has an unlinked color. We'll have to keep our eyes on that. Because at the end of the day, we do want these pages still to be linked to variables. As you can see on the right side, luckily that is the case. So we still have our variables intact. Our text styles and colors, that's looking good. Great. So setting up these different files, it is a bit of a work, but after this we can focus on the fun stuff. And it'll also take a lot less time to publish everything, to change everything. So we do have a bunch of people tuning in on different platforms. If you're still with me, just let me know where you're from, what you'll be working on this week. I'd love to hear what's going on within your lives as well. All sorts of different contact pages. Team pages, we all know those. Look how beautiful our people are. You'll have the pleasure to work with these amazing people. So I promised myself my streams would be politic free, and I plan on keeping it that way, but it's also good to know that the European Soccer Championship has finished. So congratulations to Spain. I believe it's the 4th time they actually won the championship. Never seen before. Legal pages. We all know those terms and policies, cookie privacy policy, FAQ pages. I don't think there are too many entire FAQ pages, but Nevertheless, FAQs are always important to have in your landing page as well. So having different choices to use is very nice, of course. You might be wondering, Philip, why would we ever need 6 different FAQ pages? I would say you're totally right. It is nice to pick a good starting point. It'll save you a lot of time. But once you have set up your FAQ page or a login page or a sign-up page, whatever it is, I would highly recommend deleting all the other pages that you're not using. It's only confusing, and you want to keep your file as clean as possible. Whatever you're not using, get rid of it. Same goes for colors as well. One small piece of advice from my end: before you delete color swatches that you don't need, make sure you've set up all your badges and tags, like those small elements, maybe even your graphs. Maybe you're using different colors in your graphs that are not the grays and the brand colors. Maybe you want to have like a red, orange, green, blue colors, whatever. So make sure you actually 100% certain you don't need those colors. If you you don't want to delete anything and then have to re-edit. It's a bit of a pain in the ass. It's not too bad. You can definitely do it, but then you maybe also need to reconnect things like your metrics and graphs to actually use the proper color styles or variables, I should say. So only 4 more pages to go. If you made it through, you are definitely an MVP. Because in all honesty, and I know Jordan, if you're tuning in as well, splitting up the file is definitely not the fun part. There's an explanation on why it's at this point with Figma not possible to get these separated files, because you need to, as you've seen in this file, be able to split up all the parts while still keeping things connected. And if you would import multiple files at once, it's very difficult for Figma to figure out which should be imported first, which styles and variables should be published, and then the additional pages, how that should be linked together as well. So you can already see here in the top bar, memory usage, you're good to go. But I'm going to tell Figma, no, we're not good to go yet, because we need 3 more pages to move. And then we need to publish 1 more to actually move the files. I believe there's actually a Figma command that you can use to force to clean up the... oh, wait. Am I going too fast? These are setting pages. Yes, I'm going a little bit too fast. So this is setting pages 2. That should go here. Let's not make any mistakes on the last 3 pages, guys. Believe in yourself. Informational page 1. And as you can also probably experience from this stream, this is a live and unscripted version. This is actually me doing the work, making it a lot more slower than your average high-paced YouTube video. I do plan on turning this into a YouTube video as well, and speeding up all this work. But actually making a short video for people how to get started with Untitled UI and building their own design systems. And I really hope I don't make any silly errors, which would allow me to have to redo all the work. But yeah, that's the risk you have to be willing to take. Page examples. I should probably also make the names a bit shorter. Nothing to publish here, which is kind of interesting. So everything is actually linked to outside sources. I'm not quite sure. Does it? Yeah, of course, I don't need to publish this, because if we go back to our file, these are the bottom ones. So there's not really much to, yeah, this won't link, and nothing else will link to this. So it will actually be, no, doing entire design systems, but making a line a bit too difficult. So everything is going down. I do think there's officially a line between the marketing and application components as well, or at least there should be. Application, so let's say stream in applications, marketing, and this should have, at least I think so. If I'm wrong, I would love to hear someone correct me, but I'm pretty sure that this is how I would set it up. Applications, there we go. All right. So I think everything should be up to date and published now. Move this to the first one. And yeah, so great success. Took about half an hour to set this up. And yeah, now let's get into the fun stuff. So everything is linked to each other. Keep that in mind. So the next question is, or at least the question that I would have, and I'm just gonna pause the screen share real quick. So let me just talk to you before we head into the next section. So you now have a very nice off-the-shelf design system. And a lot of people will agree with me saying, well, wow, it's amazing to have this because we already have all sorts of different buttons and all the different states. And let's just start at the beginning. If you would have a system like this, would you ever recreate it from the start? Because let's be honest, to only create all these different types of buttons and like social login buttons and even mobile app store buttons, like setting this part up alone would easily take you a day, maybe half a day. It's a lot of work. The same thing goes for typography. You want to have all these different styles, which is a pain in the ass. You have your effect styles, you have your shadows, your borders, your spacing, radius, and grids. It's a lot of work. So would you ever want to set this up again? And I think if you're a designer working at a company that's building their own design system, you could argue that it's worth it to really make it custom to do that. But I think since it's UI based, UI components are almost always the same. I haven't seen a single digital product that doesn't have a button or an input field or toggles or a checkbox, radio buttons, tooltips, sliders. These things are basic UI. So every digital application should have some form of this. So I'll get back to sharing my screen. It'll work a lot better. So if you agree that you would need to have all these components, this is already a good starting point. But then the next question is really, I don't want my application to look the same as everyone else's application. And that makes perfect sense because your brand is unique. You want to make sure that it actually works for you. So how do you do that? And I think it's important to say, well, you need to customize it, of course. And how do you customize it? So you can say, well, what is your specific gray tone or your gray color? So everything, like I said, has a very nice description. So gray is a neutral color and it's the foundation of the color system. Almost everything in UI design, text, form fields, backgrounds, dividers, are usually gray. And to give you an example of when that's not the case, I did a small, well, not small, I did a fun project for the Financial Times, or at least the Dutch version of it. And they have this salmon pink color. So their gray colors are actually not gray. And it was a lot of pain in the ass to set up. But this is how their color system looks. So their gray is actually this salmon color. They do have a brand color, which is this interesting blue color. And that would result in pages like, let's see, of course, I moved that as well. Let's say marketing pages. It'll make your entire UI look completely different. If you want, you can definitely consider doing a non-gray color for that. I'll give you an example of how that looks. So this is how it would look if your grays are not gray. So you would have this salmon color background. Here on the top, you see like a different menu. You can still use the brand colors, of course. And I really like it, to be honest. I think it's a really interesting look. I'm not quite sure about the white color on this one. I would probably, I'll just do it really gray, maybe like a very light version of that brand color to make it fit a little bit better. This way you would still have a secondary button, which is actually a white one, which stands out very nicely. But yeah, as you can see, it's quite interesting to see what happens if you change your grays to a color. Anywho, I will need to tell you that there are different types of gray. So you can say, well, there's the default gray, which is quite a bit of a modern one. You can say, I want to have a cool gray, or a gray that leans a lot more towards blue, which, yeah, for maybe like financial apps or quite modern, or yeah, there's something to say for these. I actually prefer my grays gray, but I also kind of like them warm. So I'll be experimenting with the warm gray color. So what I'll actually do is I'll move this up here. And I want to make sure that all my grays are the warm gray. They have a separate gray for their dark modes, which is, well, a bit more desaturated, I would say, which works nicer with dark mode. So truth be told, I don't use dark mode for my own brand, for my own website, so I'm going to leave it as is. But I am going to change the grays, and I'm going to change the brand color. And let me show you how to do that. So I use an app called Color Slurp. I'll just paste a screenshot in Figma so you can see it, and I don't have to change my screen share. So in Color Slurp, I always keep my color. So I use a very dark foresty green color as brand color, but I actually want to have yellow call to action buttons. So what I think is maybe one of the challenges with Untitled UI is that its starting point is really one brand color. So if I would go to, for example, page headers or page examples, might be better. If I would go to a landing page, you can see that it's actually very neutral, and the colors that, yes, Figma, come on, you can do it. You can load the file. Yeah, thank you. So you actually see the purple is used very rarely, scarcely, except here. So there are some situations where you can say, well, maybe I want to have like a more branded color. So let's say this one. So imagine the purple would be my green color. It would be very nice, but then the button would also be green. And you would have a green on green button. If you're into conversion design or whatever design, you might want to say, well, I want my colors to, or at least my buttons to really stand out. And if I have a green background, that doesn't really work. So let me show you what happens if I change the brand colors. So this will be a bit of a copy-paste exercise, but I will go to local variables. You won't be able to see my color slurp, but it's actually hovering right or left of the Figma Variables window. And I'm going to brand. So these are the brand colors. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually copy-paste my brand colors to replace it. And one of the things you can already learn from UntitledUI here is that it's called a brand color. You should not name it green. One of the reasons is that if you ever do a rebranding, it's kind of annoying if your brand color is called green and it's no longer green. So this way you can say, well, this is the different tints and shades of our brand color. And if you would ever change from green to orange or from orange to green, you can just change these colors without looking like an idiot. And this is already going to have a really cool effect. But before I show you the changes that this makes, I want to change the font styles as well. All right, so these are the brand colors. So as you can see, it's kind of funny because it happens like Figma in the background is now really working to change every element that has that color inside it. So default Inter. Inter is a really nice display font. It's really, well, there's nothing wrong with it. It's really perfect. Unless you have a better reason to pick a different font. Could it be your brand? You can definitely do that. You can also say, well, you know what, maybe the display headings, I do want to have a fancier font, but for the body, I want to keep Inter, which is perfectly fine. For me, I'm actually going to open up a plugin called Batch Styler, because for my brand, I'm using a different font. A lot of people ask me, what's that font? And I'm really scared that people will just use the same font as well, and I'll see it everywhere. But the thing that I'm doing here is I've selected all the text styles that are in here. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if I should not do this through the variables, but let's see what happens. So it gives a warning here because, for example, there used to be Inter called semi space bold, but for some reason, bricolage, or the font that I'm using, has written it together. I don't have an italic version, so I'll just use the non-italic version of the font weight that it's asking for. I'll press save, and once I hit this button, everything will crash. So it says successfully updated 68 text styles. I'm really curious to see what will happen now, because with version 5 from UntitledUI, we actually have font variables in place now. So if I go to typography, I actually see here font face. I'm curious. I need to spell this, make sure that wait, let's just leave it Inter for now, because I need to make sure that I spell it correctly. It's nice that you have a font as simple called Inter, but if you have a font called Bricolage Grotesque 48 points, we need to see what happens. Oh, we're breaking things, people. we go. So funny enough, it did change, I think, some of the font weights. And yeah, Figma is working hard in the background. So let's give it a little bit of time while I check up on the chat. Say hi if you're still with me. Let's see. Still have a bunch of people on YouTube, on X, on Twitch, on LinkedIn. Very nice. Thank you all for joining. So let's see what actually happened. So we now have a display regular, and you can even see here that in the style, everything is linked to the variable of the font family, the font weight, even the size, the line height, the paragraph spacing. Yeah, spacing. Woo! But what doesn't change, of course, is basic text. Grotesque. 48 points. So this now is our typography. And let me show you what happens now that we've updated this. One thing that I should note is that, as you probably guessed, like changing these things is a lot of work. So if I now go to buttons, we can see that we have these primary colors on our buttons, which is really nice. Even the hover thing is working. The focus state is working. And we have 244 changes. So I'm going to publish this now. And you can maybe expect that after I've published it, that once again, Figma will tell me, hey, you have more updates to publish. And that has everything to do with it being working in the background. It's being changing elements still. But yeah, we need to check out what happens, of course. So publishing it it'll take some time. It's a lot quicker now that we moved all the marketing components, application components, and the page examples to separate files, because what would happen otherwise is that if I would change colors and fonts in this style, it'll have to change it through all those different components, which is even more work. So what we can actually do now here is just keep working on this core file to make sure that all the colors, the typography, border radius, and whatnot are all set up correctly. We can publish it. And then whenever we need to, we can move to the marketing components files, the application components, and even the page examples, and update them respectively there whenever we need them to be updated. So we'll need to give this a little bit of time. What it actually says, the file has unsaved changes. That means that it's probably still syncing and updating or even uploading all the changes that we made to the Figma server. So I think it would make some sense to give it a little bit more time to first digest everything before publishing, because I think now that we're trying to publish information that's not even arrived. There we go. So changes saved, and now it could probably start publishing. Maybe we need to, there we go. Let's just double check. So it still has a bunch of changes, but we can wait a little bit before submitting them because we still have more to change. So changing the colors and typography already will make a bunch of difference. So we still have, I should delete some of these pages, by the way. I'll just go to the login and sign up pages here. And as you can see, it already makes quite the change, just the colors and the font. I really like this font. It makes me happy. But still very much Untitled UI. So we still have a bunch of things to change, and we will definitely keep working on this for another hour. So if you're still hanging here with me, thank you so much. And we can delete these pages for sure. I need to check the application components because these we moved as well. Yes. There we go. Delete a bunch of dividers. And yes, we are very happy with the new Figma dividers. And as you can see, this is what we have left within our core design system. We can definitely split it up further if we would have to, but this is already pretty good. I really already like how this is looking. So let me know in the chat, how are you feeling about this so far? Do you think this is useful? Do you think it's a complete waste of time? Would you work this way? Are you working this way? Let me know. Let's see if we can get some interaction going on, because I see we still have a bunch of people tuned in online. Yes. Cool. All right. So apparently it's still publishing, which is fun. So we had the colors for a bit, but I actually have one other trick up my sleeve. So like I said, the colors are really nice, but I want to have contrasting contrasting call to actions. And I've been a little bit lazy, because what I've done is I accepted the yellow, the tailwind. It's not tailwind, but the Untitled UI yellow color as my own personal brand color yellow in Slurp, where I documented these colors. But what I'm going to do now is quite interesting. At least I think it's quite interesting. So they say you can actually swap the default warning color. I hope you can read this. Can be swapped with the default warning color. So what I'm going to do is, to keep things simple, is I'm going to make this yellow my warning color, but also my second brand color. So it's a bit of a unusual step, I would say. So I'm going to go back to primitives. I'm going to go to warning, and I'm going to change the warning colors to the yellow instead of the default Untitled UI warning colors. And I'm sure there are people who can have some strong opinions about the fact that I'm then going to be using the warning color as a brand color, because you could argue that, well, what if you would have some sort of an error? You would want to have a big red button with the error color. But if you have a warning, 700. But if you have a warning, you want to have the warning color button. And you're absolutely right, because then my call to action buttons would look the same. And you're perfectly free to not do that. Let me just double check the colors real quick, especially 500 F7, 400 FD, 300 84B, 700 708, 70D. Yes. So these are my warning colors. And so as you can see here in the bottom, Figma is still publishing stuff, which is very cute, because it'll need to publish more, because now that I've changed the warning color, it's actually the same as this yellow color, which is now also my second brand. So let me show you the magic of the variables. I need to now figure out the buttons. So I'm going to go over to my buttons, Going to make this a little bit smaller. Thank you. And we can actually see that it's called button primary BG. So if I go to, let's see, component buttons primary, this is now how the primary buttons are set up. So it has a primary background and a hover. And what I'm actually going to do is say warning 400, which is going to be the color for the primary button. And I can do the utility warning, or I can just say color warning 400. And this would be the warning 500. You can go darker, of course. You can also go lighter. And actually, I think I'm going to go lighter on hover because, let's see. What I want to do is make sure that it has enough contrast. So if I now, let's do a small contrast check. If I open up Stark and I have this white text on top of a yellow button, it's going to say nope. So what I'm going to do is actually say my gray, where's my 950, guys? Colors gray, 950. Change the everything that's white on these buttons. I'm going to make it very gray. And you can now see that I even have a AAA scoring on contrast, which is amazing. And the focus ring is still the green color, which is pretty cool because I think it now shows a lot more that something is being selected. So these are now my new buttons. And if I now go back to a login screen or a sign up, you can see that I have these very nice green buttons, yellow buttons, my bad. And I think it stands out a lot more with the brand color. So once again, before I publish, I might as well also redo the logo. So my company logo, which I'll have to pull up quickly. Let's see, brand, resources. This should be, yeah, okay, I'm not going to move my files on stream. I don't think that's smart. Clean, square, white, SVG, pow. So this is my logo without any green on the side. And I don't have a word mark anymore. I gave up on that. And I'm going to paste it in here. So it needs to be 32. So I'm going to press K, scale the logo to 32, 32, center it, and I'm going to get rid of all this other stuff. But Linear has a bit of a app icon style thingy, which I always abuse because what I can do now is say, I'm going to add my brand or gradient on top of it, because if you've set up your brand colors, you also get brand gradients. Yay! And I can abuse those, well, it's not abuse, use those brand gradients to actually create this cool logo. And it has a stroke. And I can say, well, it's a border brand alt. So it has now this cute little border at 0.2, make it a little bit thicker, 0.5. And now I have this lovely logo. I can do two things. I can also update this logo to kind of, just say, well, this should only be 32, like this. If I clip content, it will cut off the shadow. So I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to remove or hide the logo type. This way we now have the logo. If I do ever have something adjacent to it, maybe called it Unlimited, which is the subscription service, the design subscription service that I offer, that should still be possible to easily implement. And once again, let's go to publish, because there are enough things to update. And I'm going to publish these changes. And we're already making huge strides. So the first half hour we spent really on cutting the file into separate files. And right now we're already another half an hour in. And the cool thing is now that if I compare these two half hours, the first half hour feels like it lasted twice as long. And this half hour felt like it went twice as fast. And it has to do that we're making so many changes now with the colors, the typography, and the logo. Um, and that has everything to do with us investing that first half hour in splitting up the files. So I hope you can appreciate really the investment that it requires. But I think it's going to turn out really awesome. And I especially look really forward to this because I still have a bunch of landing pages to create for my own design service. So I'm going to redo btng.studio, the website. If you want to check it out, go ahead. It's btng.studio. I'm offering a design subscription service, and I focus really on the UX part. So it can be user research, it can be wireframes, prototyping, ideation, but also design systems, marketing material. So I'm delivering or generating a lot of different outputs. And for that, I'm creating new landing pages. And it will be a huge time saver to have this perfectly in order. And maybe if time allows it, we can create a new landing page, which would be really cool as well. Let's see. Still publishing. You can see here in the bottom. And if I would go to my So in a little bit, this file should definitely be screaming for an update. So for example, this button, if I should go to main components, it actually goes here. So everything, the linking works really well. So if I now go to the separate file, which is the marketing components, I'm actually using a button, but this button is a copy from the core file. And as you know, once this publishing library finally finished, the buttons are, well, updated quite heavily. I did not change, to be honest, I did not change like things like rounding or the border. So I normally do like a less sharp border. So it's kind of funny that the border radius on these buttons, like they use 8 for the smallest 3, 4, and then the larger button is a bit more rounded to give the same feel. What I would normally do is actually change the rounding maybe to 4 to make these buttons a bit more square, but I don't want to waste your time with that. Well, while it's updating, I'd like to show you one other neat trick. So if you would go to inputs, you can actually see that there's quite a few different inputs, but on the left side, we have, or actually this row is all small, and these ones are medium. So you can see the size here on the right side. So these are small, these are medium. Then we have error messages, small, error messages, medium. But I would personally love to create a new variant. And this is going to go terribly wrong because what I need to do is create a larger one. So if this would be medium, that would be these ones and these ones. What I would normally do is actually create copies of these by going like this, and then probably use a rename plugin. Where is it? Layer rename. Find and replace layer name transform. I'm going to replace anything with MD, so these are the mediums, to LG, which is large. And I do hope that this one is actually only focusing on the selected layers, otherwise we'll be in a very bad place. So these are LGs now, as you can see. And are these still MDs? Yes, they are. Yes, cool. So how do you make these larger? There's two different ways. We can, of course, pick a larger font size. Everything here is actually, let me first select an input. So this is now 44. And then the question is, how large do we need it to be? And so I'm going to first create an input next to it. So let's first design what we want it to be. So I'm going to create an MD, and let's see, from SM. You know what, I'll do both. This is an MD, put them next to each other, and we will detach so we can properly inspect what's going on. So they are the same font size, and what actually changes here is the vertical is 8, and here's the vertical 10. So let's keep that same pattern and just change the vertical to 12. Now, this is a bit annoying because there's a very nice selection mode in Figma. So I can select this and click here, which is select matching layers. But I only want the bottom ones. So if I can now also unselect, oh, is this still called LG now, or did I undo it? That's went fine. Select and then unselect. Yeah, that I don't know. So I'm just going to do it like a complete noob. And yeah, go like this. And I feel ashamed of doing this on stream. If you know a way how to do it the right way, let me know. In this case, I don't think it's too bad. It's not too many fields. I'll just do the top part. And I will change this 8 to 10. I should do the same for the error states. And I want to show you one thing that I think might be a small error in UntitledUI. Because I think there's one thing that always breaks when you would do this. Yeah, sorry. So this should be 10. And let's see. Okay, it actually works this time. So I guess when you would change the font size, the button would not stretch to the bottom because it's actually a hug. And I think this should be a fill, because if I make the container larger, I just want the button to be taller as well. Anywho, we now have a cool new variable for an input. So if I would now create an input field, I will zoom in for you. I can actually say, is it an SM, is it a medium, or is it a large? And that did not go as it should, right? This is 44, and a medium is also 44. Yeah, so it actually did not do what it was supposed to do, and let me see why. Hug, this is content, this is hug. 44, or did it work? This is 44 as well. So the question is if I gave, I changed the corner radius instead of the, my bad guys, this corner radius should be 8. I changed the corner radius instead of the vertical spacing. And I know why, and that has to do with these things, I think. Okay, for the sake of speed, I'm just going to do these elements. This was 8. And this was supposed to be 10 or 12. It's fine, let's make it 12. So if I now have a input, and I will make it large, ta-da! So we now have a very nice large input field, and I would still have to change all these other input fields as well, but I will save that for a different time. And I want to see, actually now, I'm a bit confused of why this one isn't saying that there's an update yet. Because I'm pretty sure I've been updating this file quite intensely. Let's see, typography, open file. Yeah, interesting. So I'm gonna just close a few files and reopen them to see if that maybe forces the refresh. So as you can see, it says, well, you change the input fields now. So it also affects like the login and the forget password, and anywhere those fields are actually being used. So we're republishing. Which will take a little bit of time. So I hope on this lovely Monday morning you have your cup of coffee with you, maybe a tea or a glass of water. Even if you're on Red Bull, it's all fine with me. There's no shame here. There's no drink shaming within the BTNG studio today. I'm working on this gigantic water bottle, which is absolutely lovely. So we republished this file, and I'm not quite sure, but I'm still not seeing any updates, which is really weird. Because, for example, there are buttons in here, and they still have their primary color. And if I go to main component, I can see that it's actually updated. Interesting. Let's see what would happen if I would repick this color. If I look in variables, so there are no variables here, which makes sense. And I'm just going to Google it. So Figma design system updated, not style asset. What's the name of this? Asset library. Wait a minute. They moved it over here. I'm an idiot. Apologies. Not too long ago, they actually moved that button separate from the asset window where I was just looking. And as you can see, we already are getting these lovely yellow buttons. It says updated. So if I now go to my newsletter call to action, we can see here that we do have our green background with the yellow call to action, which is really nice, but typography has not. Let's see, all pages, update all. It's kind of interesting that you can update your assets per page. Yay, there we go. And we have a page example here. So let's take a look at, for example, a dashboard. I will go here. So this is the default look. And once I press update all pages, I'll move this window. Oh, I can't move this window. Can I? I can. Once I press update all, let's have a look at the changes here. One of the other nice things from Untitled UI is also that all the elements are set up very nicely. So for example, if I would select this artboard, this frame, sorry, and it has a fixed height of 960, which is sure, because you can export it for mockups in a nice way. But I can also say hug contents, even though it's still updating the assets. And you can see that it's taller now, but the menu kind of looks weird, right? So what I can do now is say sidebar content. This is a fill. This is also a fill, and I can actually say content vertically. Hey. Let's see if it's okay. So the fonts are updated. Still need to do a bit of color, but you should be able to say fill container, and this should hug, and then it should be moved down. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. But we are pushing a lot of different changes into this file now. And then with the last half hour remaining, I think we're going to have a really good sense of where this is going. So I'm going to stop touching my keyboard now to really show you the difference that we're making. So I cannot touch my keyboard. Okay, so remember that I told you about the brand color background and the same color call to actions. This is what I want to avoid. So when I now update my assets, and I'm having a horrible time with Figma today. All pages, update all. And it now tells me that it's updated. And we're going to see. Haha, got you. So apparently it did move a few of the color variables to its own file, which it should not have. And therefore it's not using all the colors that it should. So it now actually also shows the button that it needs to be updated. All right, so this one went a bit less smooth. I'm also kind of interested in why it thinks there's no button primary. So the dot here on the top means that it's still syncing, that it's not yet fully linked together. Oh, wait, of course. So the page examples are the last page. Before I can actually update it, I need to update the components that make use of that are being used in those page examples. So if I update it here, then it'll update all the buttons, and those are actually being used in the page example. So if I now go to page headers, the card headers, one of the things I love is that it uses the icon here as well. Application, navigation. So this is the left bar, and actually these logos should be updated as well. There we go. So you can see what's happening, right? Whenever I've updated the library and I go through some pages, Figma says, oh, well, there's actually some new stuff here as well. And that's probably because the files are a little bit too large to fully cache. So it's actually checking the files whenever you open them. Command line. So I just want to do a quick test to see what is and what isn't updated yet. So we have the charts here, which also look really good. It says we changed the text styles, which is kind of interesting, but sure. And let's see what happens now. These are the marketing. Those were these, and these actually were already updated. There's still more changes. Let's check those here header sections, because here they're actually already green, but these ones are from a component file here. So these are now also updated and need to be published. Before I publish, I want to see if there's an update first. Current file. So these are up to date. These need to be published. Yes, and this is an absolute pain in the ass the first time. But like I said, once you've set this up, your life is a lot easier. Same goes for working with this file. Set up your navigation and get rid of all the versions of the navigation that you're not using, because all this, well, publishing library and whatnot, it all goes a lot faster if you've removed all the default components from it. But I think this is already giving you a very good idea. And Joe Populas, thank you so much for joining, and your question as well. Yes, the live stream will also be available on my YouTube channel. There will be this unedited version, but at the same time, I'm also recording the session, and I'll send it to my editors to make sure there's a more compact version of it, a more digestible version, so people can scroll through it. All right, so look at these beautiful menus. Mobile versions, desktop version with a simple drop-down, even the more complex drop-downs and mega drop-downs. And yeah, there's no right or wrong. If you're interested in learning, well, what should I pick? The question should always be, it depends on what you need to present. So I see here a button tertiary color. So that's something that we can still improve. So in the main file, you would go to colors. Let's see, so color modes, utilities, components, buttons. And there's probably, well, all the purple has been replaced, so that should not be possible. So there's a tertiary color, tertiary these, so those should be gray or brand. So as you can see, that's probably a synchronization error, because even those tertiary buttons are already green. So That would be these ones. And that would probably mean that even though, while this is publishing updates at the same time, there's still an update available for this file as well. And yeah, I think that's we're almost to a point where I would say, well, this is your real starting point. Changing the brand colors, the typography really gives you plenty of stuff to start working on, your different tabs, different navigation menus, these beautiful tabbed elements. And yeah, the next thing to do really is start building pages to be able to say, well, great, I now have all the core elements that I need, and I will finish the publishing and import it in the other file as well, and show you like one last round the differences that these already made. And I think then we're at a really cool point where I have my brand new setup for building new landing pages, which could be a next version. So if I'm really interested in hearing if this is helpful to you, if you're wondering, well, what's next, or where do we go from here? Do I need to do a second stream? Just let me know, because I really enjoy helping other designers to setting this up. And my young Rai, yeah, of course we can definitely connect. I would say find me on LinkedIn. I think it's the shortest way, or mail at hi@philip.nl, which is also perfectly fine. And the publishing for this one is completed. Then let's see if here are some changes as well, which is good. And once we've updated the components, look, now we get the pie charts and all the different charts as well, which is great. So this does take a little bit of time to yeah, fully get in the system. But guys, let's be honest, if you spend 4 hours on this, half a day, and you have your design system up and running, it's incredible. Because I think having a design system like this for any company, any brand, to be able to create consistency in all your digital products is worth a ton. And to be able to set that up in such a time frame is incredibly powerful. All pages. And after this, let's go through different screens. So here it did update this top bar. This color is lacking a bit behind. Actually, there has been something weird going on with the color linking, I guess. I'm really interested in understanding. So it probably moved the colors to its own location. But if I would insert a new button, and once you start working with these, you do need to detach them. And you can just make sure that you're in the layers correctly. Header. You know what? Let's go to the. So I think there might be something going on with the linking, but you can put that button here. So this is an Excel button with no icons. We can change this to Excel. We can turn off the buttons. And since everything is dynamic, it's going to go quite smoothly. Maybe I should drop down header navigation. I could also just simply add a new version of this one here. This is called featured card. Oh, but there's actually, there we go. Yes. So this is the point where you realize you can also use a light version of your logo. So make it a white square with the green text. And it actually does say that there are new components available. So it's a bit slow, but it is working. And it will update everything correctly. I'm also still unhappy with the way it was supposed to update typography. There we go. Speak of the devil. And yeah, I think because these are now really embedded in this file, it's also not updating correctly, which is kind of interesting. There we go. Anyway, I'll leave it here for now. We're 15 minutes earlier on time, but I think this is giving you a good example of how you're able to use Untitled UI to create your own design systems, to have it as a starting point for your business for future clients, and to keep that consistency within the application. So once again, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions, feel free to connect with me on YouTube, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, or send me an email at hi@philip.nl. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. And see you next time. Take care.